All right, Ravens flock, we are back at it for week 2 of training camp for the Ravens. Today was the first official day that the Ravens got to wear the pads, so you know that means the intensity is going to ramp up. It's going to be a lot more physical than it was in week 1, and we're going to start seeing a lot more intensity at practice. That's just how it's going to go. One way to showcase that intensity is fights. There was a little bit of a scuffle that happened in training camp today. It's to be expected. Today was a hot one, and when it's hot outside, the dog days of summer, and you're wearing those pads, you just know it's gonna get to somebody at some point. And all of a sudden, you start pushing and shoving each other, and then the fight breaks out. So we had our first official fight at camp. That's how you know football's back, when we start getting fights in training camp. So we are officially back, folks. But we got a lot to talk about, because it was an eventful day of practice today. A lot of stuff happened, and a few things we do have to discuss in terms of injuries, so we do have to speak on that. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. One thing I've been doing has been taking notes, and we're going to go through these notes together in terms of everything that's been happening. So week 2, day 4, I guess. What is this? Day 4, day 5, week 2? It don't even matter how many days at this point. Week 2 of training camp, first day of pads. How did things go? Well, first of all, we're going to start off with special teams here because the kicking battle is not over. Last week, Tyler Loop was perfect, 23 of 23. Today, he had his worst day of camp, and it was the first time he missed field goals. Today, he was 5 for 8 on field goals. He missed 3 field goals, and all 3 were from below 50. I think they were actually below 45, but he missed all of them. And all of those kicks actually went left. I think the first one actually hit the post. So, yeah, that was one that kind of rattled him, I guess, because he went on to miss 2 more field goals. And all of these were under 50, so that is definitely something you don't want to see. But, again, it's practice. You're going to have some of those kicks that you just miss. It is what it is. The accuracy sometimes can be messy. And this was the first day with pads. John actually talked about this, John Harbaugh, in terms of that aspect. And he was speaking with Tyler Loop, and, you know, Loop himself said it definitely felt different with the pads on. So, yeah, maybe that did affect his kicking a little, something he's gonna have to get adjusted to, who knows, but he did miss those kicks today, 3 kicks. Meanwhile, the other kicker, John Hoyland, he made all 4 of his kicks. He was 4 for 4 on his field goals today. So the kicking battle is still going on. There is no definitive winner. It's ultimately going to be decided by the preseason, so we will see how that goes. But that's pretty much it for special teams. Let's get into the offense. Oh boy. How do I speak about this? The offense still has issues with penalties. Not much to say about the offense today, and it's not because they had a poor day in terms of making plays. It's just because all their plays, or a good chunk of their plays, were taken away because of penalties. Offensive penalties was the topic of discussion today in practice because they continue to commit these penalties. And the thing that made it unfortunate was it wasn't pre-snap penalties like a lot of the penalties we saw last week. These were post-snap penalties. Offensive pass interference calls happening multiple times. Holding calls occurring over and over again that are just killing plays. So it's a lot of post-snap penalties that are happening today in practice, and it just took away a lot of great plays. That was an unfortunate part to see there. One of the main offensive pass interference that happened was a play the Ravens actually did share. It was offensive pass interference on DeAndre Hopkins. Lamar threw him a fade route. D-Hop was being heavily covered by Nate Wiggins, and D-Hop caught it with one hand. It was a one-handed catch in the end zone for a touchdown, but it was called back on an offensive pass interference. Best play of the game. Best play of practice. That would have been the play of the day if it wasn't for the offensive pass interference, because you could clearly see that D-Hop was like pushing Nate Wiggins with one hand, and he was like pushing towards his face mask. So he got called on the offensive pass interference, and that pretty much killed the drive. So yeah, offensive penalties, still an issue for that offense. And overall for the offensive line, it's still an issue for them. They have been getting bullied all throughout training camp, and that did not stop today. Once the pads came on, the force got even more intense for that offensive line to deal with, because our front 7, they have been eating so far. Adafe Owe made some noise today. David Ojabo made some noise as well. So our offensive line, they were getting bullied already in week 1. The pads come on today, they continue to get bullied. And we'll talk about a certain individual as well. We'll get into him too, because he is the guy that shined the most today. So yeah, offensive penalties, still an issue. Offensive line, still an issue. They continue to get bullied all throughout training camp. At some point, we're going to need to see something from them, some level of consistency. We got to get a day where the offensive line is just sturdy and making plays. Roger Rosengarten, he's doing well on those individual drills. He's doing well in stopping guys. So he was a name that showed up for a positive aspect. But as a unit, the offensive line's been getting bullied all throughout training camp. So that is something that is going to have to improve as training camp progresses. Other than that, Mark Andrews. Yeah, other than that, Mark Andrews had himself a day. We talked about this last week. Mark Andrews did not really make an appearance on any major highlights, or he wasn't discussed or talked about. We usually get those days in practice where it's just a Mark Andrews day. Lamar is just constantly feeding him the ball. He's the one that's consistently getting open. He's the one that's getting finding those spots within the zone, and he's just eating it up. We usually get a few Mark Andrews days in practice. Today was the first day of a Mark Andrews practice. He pretty much was the main highlight for the offense today. He was making great plays. He had a great pass down the middle of the field. Not great pass. He had a great catch down the middle of the field on the Lamar Jackson pass. That's cool on that. So yeah, Mark Andrews, he finally had that day. Last week, in terms of the tight ends, it was all about Isaiah Likely. This week, to start off, today, we had the Mark Andrews day. Other than that, there's not much to say about the offense. Penalties still continue to harm them, and the offensive line continues to get bullied, so that's something that has to be improved on. Defensively, oh boy, this was a day. I don't want to talk about anybody else because he was the star of the show and he took over. We have been sitting back and talking about Mike Green. Where's Mike Green? When are we going to hear from him? Because we were hearing from Malachi Starks making plays. When are we going to see that moment where Mike Green makes some plays? Today was the day. The pads came on, the physicality increased, and Mike Green went to work. He dominated in team drills. Mike Green had a would-be sack on Cooper Rush, and he had another great play where he was coming off the edge and he managed to chase down Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell already broke through the hole he was going. Mike Green's like coming off the edge. Yeah, he was coming off the edge. Keaton Mitchell already broke through the hole, so he's starting to take off. Mike Green chased him down and made the tackle on that play. So that was a fantastic play by Mike Green. He was the player of the game. I keep saying game, but he was the player of practice today in those drills because he dominated defensively today. Great job. We finally got to see Mike Green make an appearance on one of these notes. It was a Mike Green type of day. So I'm glad to see Mike Green finally showcasing those dominant abilities. He was doing great on those one-on-one drills. There was a clip that showed that he was being blocked by a tight end and he just bull rushed that guy. He just dominated him. So Mike Green was making plays today. He was getting to the quarterback, he was bringing the pressure, and he had that amazing chase down tackle on Keaton Mitchell. So Mike Green was the guy. Other than that, not much to really sit back and say here. Again, it was a practice that was really filled with a lot of penalties. Great highlight plays here and there, stops here and there from the defense, but it was really Mike Green that shined on the defense today. So that's pretty much all we have to say about practice. A few things that we do have to talk about here are some injuries and some absences. So let's get the absence out the way first. Rashad Baitman, he was absent from practice today. No injury for him. It was just a sick day for him. He wasn't feeling well, but he still wanted to practice. However, the Ravens showed caution and send him home on a sick day, begrudgingly because begrudgingly for Bateman because he didn't want to go. Bateman wanted to practice today even though he was sick, and they said, nah, take the rest of the day off. We'll see you tomorrow. So Bateman, I know he felt a little bit agitated there. He obviously wanted to practice, but the Ravens being cautious, which I'm fine with, because they've been doing that the last few years to make sure everybody is safe, everybody is healthy, and everybody's good to go. So that's cool. But other than that, he's not injured. There was no injury report about him. He was just sick today. They just sent him home. He's all good. He'll most likely be back for practice tomorrow. Jair Alexander, he was not at practice today. He had a little soreness on his knee, had a little bit of swelling on his knee. I think they had to drain that out. Obviously, this guy is recovering from an injury. It's not that long ago that he had that injury, and he's going through that recovery process, and he is good to go in practice. It's just that's one of the things he's going to occasionally deal with, a little bit of knee swelling. I believe it was a PCL injury that he had suffered, so that he was able to recover from. So it's just going to be one of those things he's going to have to deal with. He's just dealing with some swelling on the knee. the Ravens being precautious there and making sure, you know, they don't try to put him out there when he's compromised or dealing with anything. So just a little bit of knee swellness. They made sure to keep him out of practice, and it's all good from there. There's a high chance he practiced tomorrow, but we'll just have to wait and see. Last but not least, Jalen Armour Davis. I'm not going to lie, JAD, I don't know if he's going to make this roster. He suffered another injury. So far in his career, man, he's been great. When he's healthy and he's on the field, he's a guy that can claim a roster spot, no problem. But the issue with him is that throughout his career, he's just been hurt. He's barely been available, and that lack of availability is a problem. So now I'm sitting here thinking there's a high chance he doesn't end up on this roster if he can't stay healthy. He suffered an injury during practice today. I believe they said they were going to do some tests. John Harbaugh does not have any specific assessment about the injury because it happened during practice. He didn't get any information about that, so we'll find out more information about that maybe tomorrow. Who knows? But we'll get more information on that later. Either way, if Armour Davis keeps getting hurt, he's just not going to have a roster spot here because you cannot continue to keep somebody that can't stay healthy. We've seen this before with several other Ravens players. One of the main guys we talked about in Deshaun Elliott, he eventually, was gone from the team because he couldn't stay healthy. He was great when he was on the field, but he could not stay healthy and they had to move off of him. That could happen with Armour Davis if he cannot stay on the field. So it is what it is when it comes to that. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Not much to talk about here past that. Another eventful day at practice, and we'll just go from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, that is all we've got for today's day of practice. We will be back tomorrow, and we'll see what happens there. That's all I got for you guys. Be sure to stay safe, and peace out.